time now to chat with director Peter Strickland, who's releasing a new short film on Mubi in a couple of weeks' time, on the 11th of December to be precise. It's called Cold Meridian, and I'm delighted to say Peter joins us now to tell us more. Not quite sure where he is. Hello, Peter.
Hello, I'm in Hungary in lockdown, I guess. Yeah.
And how long have you been there?
Quite a while, quite a few years now.
How have you found the last few months? Because obviously we're asking all the directors and actors, and some have found it very creative, and some people have found it incredibly difficult, not being able to be creative at all. How have you found it?
Well, I've been looking after my kids really. So they're very young. My wife is a teacher, so normally she goes to her office where she teaches on Zoom, where she won't get interrupted by the kids. So, I mean, yeah, I haven't really done much at all, to be honest. I've become much better at cooking, much better at cleaning. But yeah, I mean, it's just, in a way, it's a chance to redeem myself for all those months I've been away filming and going to festivals. So at least there's something good that comes out of it. But no, I mean, it's just after they've gone to bed, there's just nothing left in you to. I think I wrote about 15 pages during lockdown. I mean, we were going to do a film in between the two lockdowns, but it fell apart at the last minute. We couldn't get insurance, so that was yeah.
We've got a big old lockdown happening in most of the UK. What's the situation in Hungary? Is everything shut there too, cinemas and so on?
Cinemas, yes. Well, not everything. They have a curfew after 8 o'clock, but it's not as. I personally think it should be the same as the UK. The numbers are pretty bad here.
So let's move on to more certain territory and Cold Meridian. And I think we were saying this earlier. I think this is the only movie that we're going to talk about where the interview is going to last longer than the actual pitch. So tell us about Cold Meridian and what we're seeing here.
Well, that was a commission from the London Short Film Festival. I think they read an interview with me where I was talking about what we call ASMR, I think autonomous sensory meridian response. And bizarrely, it was a producer from something else who introduced me to that term. He asked me if I was prone to this kind of thing, and I looked it up and I thought, oh my god, this is me. So I did it a lot in my last feature film, and I wanted to kind of put it behind me. And then this commission came along, and it was just hard to say no. I think any chance to do filming, you just try and grab it. Really, that was last December. We shot the film.
So, can you just explain what autonomous sensory meridian response is?
Well, for me, it's it's a response to certain tactile sounds. I guess whispering, page turning, a pencil on paper. I mean, there's quite a lot of misunderstanding around it. People seem to think it's something erotic when it's not. It was quite sensual, but I would never call it erotic. Well, not for me anyway. I don't know about other people, but and it's weird because I had it since childhood, but without knowing what it was. I mean, I never really questioned it. I mean, I don't question eating an ice cream and enjoying it. So it's the same kind of thing. I just assumed everyone enjoys those sounds. And I remember when I was a kid, my brother used to have these panini stickers for football. So it's just kind of weird. I would associate ASMR with Kenny Dalglish and Bobby Robson and people like that. It's weird how that connection goes to the feature films I was making. When I made In Fabric, my last film, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos connected to that. But what was weird is after making that film, I remember one of the channels I follow, someone told me that the woman who does those ASMR things called me a fake. So suddenly you're sort of trying to go to sleep with this woman whispering to you, knowing that she thinks you're a fake. So it kind of slightly marred my ability to fall asleep. But
I
anyway.
should say the first time I had ever heard the term was in relation to In Fabric. And you and I spoke about it. In fact, when I was at the Strasbourg Film Festival a year or so ago, and we gave one of the top prizes, a couple of the prizes, in fact, to In Fabric, which I loved. And you had to record a couple of videos for us, and you didn't want to be in the video, so you recorded the hotel room that you were in, and then we saw the inside of your minibar, which was particularly fantastic. But I remember reading about how you hear these whispering sounds or sounds of people stroking material, and it's meant to cause a kind of prickling in the back of your neck or whatever, and thinking that just sounds mad. And then looking it up and going, oh no, that actually, that's really, really peculiar. And so, yes, I had never heard of it until I saw In Fabric, and what a strange new world it was.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, even in cinema, I think films like last year in Marion Bad that has that quality to it. That slightly soporific, dreamlike feel, or even some of the music I was listening to, like Robert Ashley with automatic writing, Franco Battiato's cafe table music. I mean, all kinds of stuff. But I think the weird thing is, I think those musicians and filmmakers didn't have a name for it. I think they just instinctively pursued the sounds that put them into that kind of dreamlike state.
And the way this manifests itself in the short film, which is 6 minutes long, and it's we're told at the beginning that it's dancers rehearsing, and then we're told that they recorded their own moves for a performance they didn't have a date for. And then we immediately move to a scenario in which we see somebody having their hair washed, and we hear the sounds of the hair washing. And later on, we have people looking through negatives of pictures, and we hear the crinkling of it, and that is classic ASMR. Yeah,
It is, yeah. I mean, I try to just assemble all the sounds that I would somehow respond to, but put it in this kind of narrative, which is slightly, I wouldn't say satirizing, but looking at social media, and especially the idea of looking and gazing at things, and voyeurism, and who's looking at whom, and just somehow blurring the boundaries between dreams, virtual reality, and real life, between these viewers and the performer. He seems to somehow see the people who are looking at her. So I try to do it almost like a bad ASMR dream. I wouldn't call this film. It's not the kind of film you could relax to. It's quite
unsettling.
Because I think what it was, I knew I couldn't compete with the performers on YouTube. I mean, you get a few cowboys on there who don't quite understand it, but the good ones are really, really good. So I just thought, okay, why don't we just try something which is about ASMR rather than something that embodies it so much. I mean, even though you have a few token ASMR sounds in there.
We had Tilda Swinton on the show a couple of weeks ago, who's in a new Pedro Almodovar film called The Human Voice, which is 30 minutes long, and they're hoping for a cinematic release. I mean, it was planned to have a cinematic release, and then cinemas closed and so on, but it's a cinematic story that they're telling. And it could have been longer, it could have been shorter. Mark has mentioned that it's 6 minutes long. What is it that decided the length of your story, Peter, that it's just 6 and a bit minutes? Could it have been longer, or what were the deciding factors there?
I think film stock had a lot to do with it, and the budget. We shot it. Well, the budget was £3,000, so it was a struggle to get that, especially on film. If we had done it on digital, I guess it would have been roughly the same. I think there was only so much. It kind of lent itself to that kind of time. I mean, I think if you look at those YouTube videos, they tend to go on for half an hour, but at the same time, this was not something to send you to sleep. So yeah, I think in my head I had it between 5 and 10 minutes. I think I was also exploring other things with dance and movement, because I did a music video just before that, which had a similar technique with taking stills, and that slightly confrontational, kinetic feel was something I really I kind of chanced upon it, and I really wanted to try it once more with this film.
Describe for us, if you can, the plot of the 6 minutes. Because essentially, there's two people watching, two people dancing, who we also see in a. So, if you were to summarize the story, how would you do it?
Well, I think what the viewers are watching is, or what we think they're watching, is two dancers preparing for a performance, which we never see. That's somehow in the future. So we see their activities getting ready for it. So the hair washing, the drawing storyboards for it, archiving the photographs from the rehearsals. But within that, we're caught between viewers watching those actions and getting high, basically. I mean, if I had to describe it in one sentence, it's people getting high off the internet. So yeah, I think it was just a case of having that push and pull between something quite intense, but something quite relaxing at the same time. But also just looking at how we look at things. So you see these cameras which are always there, and it's the gaze of the viewer, it's the gaze of me as the director. And I think this kind of ritualistic element. So the viewers don't have names; they have numbers, and they're in the thousands and thousands of viewers. So you get the feeling that this whole thing is just played out again and again and again, almost like an open, and you just open and then open and then close.
The idea of the trance-like state obviously ties back to something which happens in Fabric, in which one of our central characters has to recite the mechanism and the fixing mechanism of tumble dryers, and people ask him to do it because as he does it, it sends them into a trance-like semi-ecstatic reverie. And I interviewed the actor who has to do that. And I said, what was it like learning that stuff? And he said, well, of course, it doesn't make any sense. But what I had to do was I had to make it make sense in my head. Otherwise, I couldn't remember any of the stuff about wig-wag terminals. And so that whole kind of ritual thing about somebody reciting something and then it becoming an ecstatic reverie for the viewer or for the listener, that is something that's in Fabric, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know it seems unusual. I think when people saw it, I think some people hated those scenes and didn't get it. But if you think of it in terms of this as an incantation or a chant, I mean, that goes way back to kids' fairy tales and so on. The idea of chanting a spell. So ASMR, yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of people don't respond to certain sounds, but I think there was a connection between incantations and someone going through a washing machine instruction manual.
Can you still remember that that speech?
No, I don't think I even remembered it on set, to be honest. I mean, it was very nice of Leo to say he learnt the lines, but he could have easily done it differently and I wouldn't have noticed.
No, he said he had to get them absolutely particularly right. And of course, I spend a lot of time listening to the fantastic Cavern of Antimatter soundtrack album for In Fabric, which is one of my favourite soundtrack albums of the last few years. And I can't hear it without hearing Leo telling me how to fix my washing machine in a strange incantatory way.
Peter, what do we find you working on next? As you know, hopefully 2021 is going to be easier for everybody. Have you got a number of projects that you're thinking up, or just the one, or how's it looking for you?
Well, it's like 3 buses in a row now. So we were going to shoot. It's a film called Flux Gourmet. It's been cancelled 3 times now. But we literally were going to shoot November the 2nd. We had the cast, we had the locations, we had the finance. It was all set to go. So that's about food and the stomach. And I'm writing a kids film, which is like a kids version of the same thing. I think this might sound a bit silly, but I don't often get offended by films, but I really got offended by Peter Rabbit. The scene with the anaphylactic shock. I mean, I'm not into cancelling things. I just see something and I think, okay, well, that's that, but I would like to try something different because I think there's so much misunderstanding around celiac disease and allergies and so on. So I wanted to do something without being didactic. I wanted to kind of really explore that, but without turning it into comedy. So that was my big thing to do.
I'd just like to say, Peter, that you are amongst friends in being offended by Peter Rabbit. I thought that Peter Rabbit was, I mean, I'm not offended not just on the level of the thing that you're particularly talking about, which of course did become a news story, but at the level of the entire film itself. We now have a sequel on the way, astonishingly enough. But yes, Peter Rabbit, or as we like to call it, Irritating Rabbit, was one of those, I'm sorry, you have to draw the line somewhere, and that line shall be drawn here.
Yeah, it's strange because I've seen a fair amount of video nasties and so on. But the one occasion in my life, well, I'm quite shy online and I don't really go on there. But I got so wound up. I actually went online to argue with people, and it's very interesting. I mean, because they were saying that kids know the difference between a rock falling on someone's head or not, but the difference is a rock hurts everyone, whereas a peanut or an allergen doesn't hurt everyone. That's the difference. And unless
I'd just like to say that I'd say that Peter Rabbit hurt everyone, and I think universally across the board, no.
Except there's another one.
Except there's another one coming. Yeah. But I am just so thrilled that somebody who, as you quite rightly say, comes from the same background as I do, having, video nasties and all the rest of it, the film that offended you was Peter Rabbit, and that's why I love you, Peter.
Likewise, yes.
Well, that's it. Okay. Well, that lovely seems a suitable place to finish the conversation. Peter Strickland, thank you very much indeed. Cult Meridian turns up on Mubi on December the 11th. Peter, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thanks.